Okay, thank you. So welcome to today's presentation on welcoming Afghan evacuees. My name is Michelle Rivero. I'm the director of the Office of Immigrant and Refugee Affairs for the city of Minneapolis. This office is committed to making Minneapolis a place where all feel a sense of belonging and welcome, including our immigrant and refugee residents. We're grateful that you all are here today for our conversation on welcoming Afghan evacuees, and recognize that this conversation is taking place during Asian American, Native Hawaiian, Pacific Islander Heritage Month. The AAPI community includes individuals from Afghanistan. So we're grateful that you're here with us today, and we'll pull up a PowerPoint in a moment. I'll briefly cover what we will talk about today and just ask if people can see the PowerPoint as I pull it up. Can you see the PowerPoint?
Yep.
Super. Thank you very much. So I'll give a little bit of information about what we'll learn today. We'll do a brief overview of Operation Allies Welcome, the Afghan Welcoming Initiative here in Minnesota. We'll talk about welcoming work that's being done and has been done by community organizations, refugee resettlement organizations, legal service partners, and city staff to help community members start a new chapter of their lives here in our city and state. We'll also share information about City of Minneapolis and Minneapolis related information, including information on work supporting the Afghan resettlement community through Minneapolis Public Schools and Hennepin County Office of Multicultural Services. We'll highlight some immediate needs, and we'll also share where you can learn more and how you can be involved. If welcoming begins with each one of us, how can we each be welcomers and welcome our Afghan resettlement community that has come here to Minnesota? And finally, we'll talk a little about important lessons we're learning that will assist us in future large-scale resettlement efforts. If you look on the right-hand side of this slide, you'll see in the acknowledgement section, these are the speakers who will have sharing information with us today: Nasrine Sajadi from Afghan Cultural Society, Rochelle King from the Department of Human Services Refugee Programs Office, Anjali Cameron from the Council on Asian Pacific Minnesotans, Will Looker and Roman Cotwell from CAPI, Yusra Murad from Zakah, Ward Westray from the YMCA, Deborah Ziesmer from the Youth Coordinating Board, and Mike Slezak from City of Minneapolis Employment and Training. Again, just as a housekeeping item, we are recording this conversation today. If you could please mute your mics, that would be super. And we have some time dedicated at the end of the conversation for questions. So I'll ask you to save your questions till the end, but if you like, please feel free to put them into the chat. And once we are done with the different, with the PowerPoint, we'll address questions from the audience. So thank you so much for being with us today. Oh, I'm hearing a little bit of feedback. If people could please mute your mics if you are not speaking, I think that that'll help with sound. Super. And if we have Nasrine Sajadi with us, I'm sorry I can't see the list of participants, but Nasrine, are you with us?
I'm here.
Oh, wonderful. Yay. So if you'd like to start us off, Nasrine, please feel free to introduce yourself, share information about the community and the work that you are doing with Afghan Cultural Society.
Sure. So I'm Nasrine Sajadi. I am a part of the Afghan Cultural Society. The Afghan Cultural Society started out in 2018 by the founder, Amina Baha. She started the organization because she was trying to preserve the culture, so her children didn't lose their connection to Afghanistan. We connected in 2019, shortly after COVID happened and things kind of slowed down for us. In 2020, in 2021, we were reached out to join this response. And we've been there since August in a volunteer basis. We have recently just partnered with DHS and have joined the refugee consortiums. We now have, I don't know, we just are hiring another person. We have a growing team now, so we have funds to actually hire folks to help us support this work. So it's not just us scrambling. But some of our mission in Afghan Cultural Society is to advocate for and empower our communities through a range of services, including assisting them in improving their mental and social health, promoting economic self-sufficiency, and creating a safe space for cultural well-being. Some of the stuff that we do is we focus on pretty much any need that the community calls us on. We try to find a way to make it happen. Our main focus right now is housing, education, and mental health, really. We are hearing a lot of stories from folks feeling very isolated, and even young people having a hard time in school because they're having a hard time communicating with folks. And there's a lot happening in the community. So yeah, can you go to the next slide? I think I kind of talked about this in what I see.
Wonderful.
Yeah, so I think I kind of explained this a little bit in the last slide too as well. If you are working with any Afghans, please, please, please connect them with us if they are feeling lonely or if they're feeling isolated. We are in the process of creating several summer activities to get the youth together, the women together, the families together, all kinds of different activities for everybody's comfort level. And so please, please, please connect them with Afghan Cultural Society. Our contact info is on the top here. If you especially are experiencing folks that are dealing with deteriorating mental health issues, symptoms of anxiety, depression, PTSD, please send them our way. We have connections to resources that can help them in this situation prior to it getting to extreme cases. If you're working with youth, please let us know if you're experiencing behavioral issues with young people, if you're seeing people dealing with financial struggles, i.e. wearing the same clothes every day, young people growing out of their clothes really quickly. Let us know. We can find the resources to get them the things that they need. Otherwise, we are always available to educate folks and to support our community in whatever way is necessary. If you'd like to partner with us or if you have ideas on how to help the community, please feel free to reach out to us. I will put my contact info in the chat. I am not going to be here for the questions, so if you do have questions, please just email or call me. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Nasrine. I'm really grateful that you're able to be here and really kick us off with an explanation of the important work that is community-led, that is happening in community to support Afghan families who are resettled here, and are grateful for your tireless efforts to help people find a sense of place and a sense of home here in Minnesota. And with that, I will turn to Rochelle King from the Department of Human Services Refugee Programs Office, and Anjali Cameron from the Council on Asian Pacific Minnesotans. And I will pull up the next slide. So it'll take me just one quick second. Sorry that it's so clunky.
That's okay. I can start. Thanks, Michelle, and introduce myself. Again, my name is Rochelle King. I'm at the Resettlement Programs Office at Department of Human Services. And our office, actually, the Resettlement Programs Office started in the governor's office in 1979 in response to Cambodian resettlement that was happening. And in 1980, that office moved to the Department of Human Services, where it's been since that time. And as the slides are coming up, just to give you a really brief overview of who we are and what happens. I think this is the last slide, Michelle. Can go back to the first one. Thank you. So just to give you I'm here to give you a really broad overview, not talk too much so that the experts on the panel that do the hard work of meeting people's needs can have the time to speak. So reception and placement, the U.S. resettlement program, kind of happens in 2 stages. There's those initial services, reception and placement, that happens with the U.S. Department of State. So you see the logo of the Department of State in the upper left-hand corner there. And those services are, and that part of the federal government helps get people here and then places them in communities. And they partner with local resettlement agencies to do that. Those services are short-term, though. They last 30 to 90 days. And so where our office really comes in the state of Minnesota is the federal government has a state coordinating entity. So in Minnesota, that is our office here at the Department of Human Services to help connect the dots, to make sure that after that initial resettlement, people are connected to the services and supports that they need to build their well-being here in Minnesota. We also help to distribute funds that come from the federal government to support those longer term needs. So one of the things that we do is we can provide services, or folks are eligible for the services that we fund for up to 5 years. And we don't provide direct services at the state of Minnesota. So we're partnering with community organizations and others throughout that time. Next slide, please. So in this particular response, I'm just going to take 1 minute to say Operation Allies Welcome Minnesota. As we saw the crisis unfold in Afghanistan and resettlement start to happen, we really just tried to call people together to make sure that anybody who would arrive in our state would have access to the basic needs that they were eligible for. Or the basic needs that they have. I'm sorry, my headphones are about to die. So really working to coordinate with others to do that. And our goal also was to build the capacity of our community to welcome more and more people. Next slide, please. And how that really played itself out here in Minnesota is a building of capacity over time. The federal government was asking local resettlement affiliates in the state, what is the local capacity to welcome Afghan evacuees? And you can see the progression over time as we work together to harness all of the desire for Minnesotans and communities to welcome people. We saw that number grow over time until January 2022, when the capacity that was presented to the U.S. government was 1,500 people that Minnesota thought we could resettle. Ultimately, about 1,250 people were resettled in our state through these efforts. Next slide, please. And just to dig a little bit more deeply in that, who are the people, the families that came? And why are we talking in Minneapolis in particular? So Minneapolis has really stepped up in really amazing ways to be that place of welcome, like Michelle was talking about. The average size of families of those 1,250 or so folks that came, the smallest case of family size was 1 and the largest was 13. So what we actually saw was a lot of very small cases, so single adults, and then quite a few very large families as well. Over half of those people that arrived are kids, and over 56%, these aren't final numbers, are in Hennepin County, with 33% of the overall numbers actually residing either permanent housing being in Minneapolis. Next slide, please. And we know that it takes a community, that while that initial part of resettlement is a federal process that happens, resettlement happens in communities, and it happens with people coming together to share their expertise to make sure that people get what they need. People who are arrived, the Afghan evacuees who arrived through this program, are eligible for services and supports like other residents in our community, and really tapping into both the mainstream services that exist here, as well as supplementing those with specialized services, are really what it takes to construct well-being here in Minnesota. And as you look at the list of people who are involved, the experts that are needed to build well-being, it is a very broad, and really, as I said, will take the efforts of people and many experts within our community over time. Next slide, please. And in our office, some of the services that we fund that supplement those mainstream organizations include a variety of services. And I'm not going to go into each one individually, but just to know that we partner with community-based organizations, actually provide federal funds that we bring to local community to support the needs that we see as extra to what the mainstream services can fund. And Nasrine had mentioned that the Afghan Cultural Society has joined network services in a couple of these areas already. So we have really tried to invest resources to expand what already exists to be able to meet the needs of the Afghan community, as well as looking at some specialized resources that I'll mention in just a moment. Next slide, please. And to give you a sense of who we partner with, on the next slide, I'm not going to go over all of it, but these are the community-based organizations that we fund right now through that network of services that we call the Resettlement Network Services. Next slide, please. And I know it's really fast, but and just to give you the sense of the diversity of organizations that we fund. And this is my last slide, just to say sort of like what our strategies are right now. Really wanting to make strategic investments to help people build well-being. And that has really seen itself roll in phases, right? Those initial investments that we really made were around short-term supports for immediate needs. That's on the very bottom of that triangle there. And you can see on the right a list of all of the, this isn't an exhaustive list of everybody who was engaged, but these are the entities that we actually engaged in formal partnerships, like provided some funding to support just those initial immediate needs. The items that are in bold on these and these intermediate and longer term investments are things that we're working on right now that we see and we hear as community priorities, and that we're looking at the federal resources that we've received to make investments in those areas to support those intermediate and longer term needs. The things that are not bolded are things that we have already have some investments in place for. Slide, please. And I'm just going to bring up again this slide with the building well-being as I introduce or hand it over to Anjali. The best resettlement is done as community, and the best resettlement done is in collaboration. And we have been so grateful through this for the Council of Asian Pacific Minnesotans to help be a convener and to lift up the voices in the community to make sure that the government, where we can be responsive when the resources that we have are being invested in the right way. So I'll tag you in, Anjali.
Thanks, Rochelle. So hi, everyone. I'm Anjali Cameron. I'm Research Director at the Council on Asian Pacific Minnesotans. And if you're not familiar with the State Ethnic Council, so we are a state agency created in statute. Actually, it's interesting that you mentioned RPO was created in 1979. Our council was created in 1985 as a direct response to the resettlement of Southeast Asian refugees here to Minnesota. And so it's really important in the work and why we were created to be able to help new communities adjust to our state. And so that's certainly a part of our role in this response with the evacuation of Afghanistan. In state statute, I want to highlight this because it can vary between different programs, but within state statute, our council is defined as representing Afghanistan and eastward. And so that's a little bit unusual because in other states and at the federal level, it's not always included as Central Asian countries are not always included as defined as being Asian and or Pacific Islander. And so I just want to mention that in case people have any questions about that, I'd be happy to answer it. And we are doing some federal advocacy about including those Central Asians as an Asian community because it is API Heritage Month. So glad that we could have this conversation during API Heritage Month as well. It's very fitting. So going back to what Rochelle just mentioned with regard to having this response really have community-led voices. So as part of the Operation Allies Welcome Minnesota, there was a recognition of a need for really community input and how this response was driven, and also an opportunity to connect resources across different community organizations, across all sorts of different entities that wanted to be involved to meet the needs of Afghan community members who were newly arrived. And so we have people with with resources and people with needs, and how do we bring all these folks together? And so that really was the impetus for the creation of the roundtable. And so those happen on a weekly basis on Tuesday mornings. Anyone on this call is welcome to join. And really the focus of those meetings is to coordinate a community response and create a connection hub where all the various stakeholders who are working in this response can pool resources and come together. I think many times and in many different situations, and particularly in situations of crisis, we recognize that we are stronger when we do things together rather as individuals. And so really it's about bringing everyone together. We start each meeting now with just a recognition that there may be some very urgent needs within the community. And so it's really an opportunity to bridge those connections, both in a very tangible way with just the transfer of goods, but also in an intangible way with people sharing different expertise. And so I'm really excited about some of our other presenters. You already heard from Afghan Cultural Society, but a lot of the organizations that are on this call also participate in that roundtable and are really leading this response, advocating for Afghan community members when things are not going as great as we would hope them to go in terms of just adjusting to life here in the US. And so it's really, they're doing absolutely incredible work and really tireless work in making sure that community members have a voice in this response. So I will, I want to mention just when I talk about the stakeholders, so it's community-based organizations, various levels of government from state, city to county, a lot of partners, both from the Afghan community, from broader API and cultural communities, religious communities. So it's a very diverse group of stakeholders that are coming together. There's also school districts and other entities that may support communities like resettlement agencies, all participating in this call, and even people who are just volunteering in some capacity to help Afghans with their adjustment to Minnesota. So I will put in the chat some information just on our website. Pull this up. So which has additional resources. And if anyone is interested in also attending the Afghan Evacuee Community Roundtables, I'd be happy to add you to that list. And sorry, my teams, for those of you who attend the roundtable, know how slowly my teams operates. Yeah, I want to thank everyone, particularly the other organizations on the call, for their dedication in this response, and happy to stay for questions at the end.
That's wonderful. Thank you so much. And, just thinking about the unprecedented resettlement effort that has taken place with this community of relocating over 1,200 people to Minnesota within a 6-month period. It feels miraculous, and there is a lot of credit to go around. Very grateful for the leadership of the Department of Human Services Refugee Programs Office and the Council on Asian Pacific Minnesotans, and certainly the organizations you'll hear from now who are working with the Afghan community, including refugee resettlement organizations and other nonprofit service providers. So with that, I'll turn it briefly to Ben Wallin from Minnesota Council of Churches. And Ben, if you could also quickly introduce yourself for the group as you share some remarks regarding the work of MCC in this resettlement initiative.
Great. Thank you, Michelle, and good morning, everybody. My name is Ben Wallin. I direct the Refugee Services Programs at the Minnesota Council of Churches. We are a nonprofit based in South Minneapolis, just south of downtown, and we are one of the 4 resettlement agencies, refugee resettlement agencies in the Twin Cities. That includes International Institute in St. Paul, Arrive Ministries in Ridgefield, and Lutheran Social Service, also based in Minneapolis. All of our agencies have for years welcomed and resettled refugees to Minnesota, and we continue to do that. As outlined by Rochelle, as with the evacuation of Afghanistan, refugee resettlement agencies were enlisted to do resettlement work and to resettle Afghans, evacuees into this community. This has been a very intensive and quick process with a lot of people coming in a short time, and so it stretched the capacity that we had as agencies to do this work as quickly as possible. So that's where, with the intense collaboration with community resources, with the state, with other partners, that's we've all banded together to make this effort happen. Typical within this work, within resettlement, we work with refugees and in this case Afghan parolees formally for the first 3 months of after they arrive. In this response and otherwise, we help with finding housing for new arrivals. We are connecting people to community resources, helping people apply for public assistance and medical assistance, SNAP, etc. Conducting school enrollment for children, ESL enrollment for adults, providing cultural and community orientation so that our new arrivals understand this community they're in, showing people how to ride the bus and do access public transit, and really how to access the resources that they will need in order to become self-sufficient and independent in the long term. The formal resettlement program funded by the government is a 3-month process or 3-month long time period. It's pretty short. Within our agency, and other resettlement agencies, there are longer term supports that support people, but we also are connected to and reliant on the resources such as Afghan Cultural Society and those other family sister agencies throughout the community in order for ongoing and community support. And I would just lastly say one of the key elements in this work as it relates to welcoming Afghans, I think the Afghan community has grown immeasurably now with this influx of arrivals. And so organizations such as the Afghan Cultural Society, such as the Afghan community in Minnesota, and other groups have really been stepping up now to support the newcomers. And so we're happy to partner with them and to be helping to, however we can, to build resources out for those entities, because they will be with and part and parcel of people's lives here for a long term.
Wonderful.
Yep.
Thank you so much, Ben. And if you could put contact information for MCC into the chat. I know that many organizations, including MCC, has been very active in a number of areas, including housing. So just want to make sure that people have a point of contact there. And with that, I'll turn to CAPI. We have Roman Kotwal and Will Lucker from CAPI. If you could go next, please. Thank you and welcome. Oops, here, let me pull up a slide. Sorry. Just take me 1 second. There we go. Please go ahead.
All right, perfect. Yeah, here. So I guess I'll start with sort of a quick general overview of what CAPI does and sort of the services we offer. And then Roman will be able to speak to more of the specifics of the Afghan resettlement that we've been working on alongside Ben Wallin and Anjali. So first of all, my name is Will. I use he, him pronouns. I am the Housing Stability Coordinator at CAPI USA. We focus on, as an organization, providing resources and wraparound social services to immigrants and refugees. What started off as a food shelf for Southeast Asian immigrants and refugees fleeing the war in Vietnam and the secret war in Cambodia has now blown up into just a general organization where anybody who needs anything from food shelf services to employment services, job training, and now housing stability services can find some extra assistance with us. So we divide that up into 3 basic branches, where it's our economic empowerment group, which has free job training, free job search, and job building, job skills building assistance programs for folks. These jobs include things like hand soldering, building maintenance, CNA, PCA courses, things like that. It also includes our MFIP team, or our Minnesota Family Investment Program team, that's contracted through the county to support young, low-income families, usually single-parent households, in finding stable employment and government assistance. That also brings us over to our basic needs department, which is where me and Roman are, where it houses our Afghan resettlement team, houses our housing stability team, which both focus on getting clients into stable housing situations. Roman will go more into the Afghan specifics, but in general, housing stability, as you can see on the slide here, we try to provide basic services like we drive people to their appointments. We provide case management where we help search for housing based on the client's specifications, like their budget, where they want to be, what's close to their children's schools, things like that. We also coordinate with government entities to try and follow up on any government applications they have, whether it's for public housing, Section 42, things like that. And then we also just try to be a general touch point for them. We deal with a lot of people who are housing unstable, highly mobile, or homeless. And so we're usually like their main point of contact for getting referred to food shelf services or getting referred to various forms of financial assistance, like our benefits enrollment center, which is helping people apply for things like SNAP, MNsure, and whatnot. And yeah, that's kind of like the general gist of what CAPI does. We offer a lot of other things that I could talk for hours about, but I don't want to take up too much time. So I'll just leave my contact info in the chat, and then Roman, can you go into our specifics?
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much. Good morning, everyone. My name is Roman. I'm program manager for CAPI, and I work really closely with our case managers and case aid for our Afghan arrivals. We, with the help of DHS, we were ready and organized in systematic manner to work closely and receive 250 Afghan families, including families and single individual. They came by different cases. We have received our first arrivals on January 10th, and our last arrivals were on February 21st. We welcome new arrivals. We received them at the airport. We brought them here to our transition site. We follow on their case management. We wanted to make sure that we warmly welcome our new arrivals here in the state of Minnesota, provide them warm meals, make sure they have suitable accommodation here, and wanted to make sure that we provide housing. So what it does is that we provide core services for the Afghan refugees or arrivals. Once we receive them, within 25 hours, our case managers would go over, meet and grade them, make sure they have all their documents, passports or tazkiras or nation ID and stuff. And beside that, we wanted to make sure that they have some petty cash on hand, debit cards, bus cards. We deliver phones, we deliver hotspots through PC for People. And yeah, within 24 hours, we also gather their documents. We process them for food and medical support, like medical application. Families would be assigned to MFIP, Minnesota Family Investment Program. Single individual were processed through RCA, Refugee Cash Assistance Program. In the transition side, we work really closely with three partner organizations called SCRS, Allight, and SEVA. Allight helped supported us to make and provided housing setups to make sure all the basic needs are provided for the Afghan arrivals. SEVA and SCRS located homes for these new Afghan arrivals. As you guys all know, that we were in housing crisis and stuff, but we were successfully able to accommodate 150 families out in our local communities, Twin Cities metro area, Minneapolis, St. Paul, and St. Louis Park. And yeah, absolutely. We wanted to make sure that our arrivals have their EAD cards on hand, employment authorization document, so Social Security on hand. Those do not have Social Security. We help them with the local Social Security Administration to process them and get them new Social Security cards. And yeah, absolutely. And another thing is that, like Ben went through a little bit, we also wanted to make sure that when the family move out from the transition site to their homes, that their children are registered at school. Adults are registered at English language courses, and as well as they're they're well connected with other local Afghan communities who are already resettled here, with Afghan Cultural Society, with Afghan community in Minnesota, and wanted to make sure that over the time, once they receive their core services, they have, we help them with employment as well. So we wanted to make sure that over the time, within 90 days resettlement services, our goal is to fulfill all the gates and deliver our services on time. And at the end, we wanted to make sure that all of our arrivals and refugees are self-sufficient and could continue their new beginning in their lives here in the state of Minnesota.
Wonderful. Thank you.
If you guys have any question, I'll put my information there. Please feel free to contact me anytime.
That's wonderful. Thank you so much, Roman. Thank you so much, Will. It's really helpful to understand the comprehensive effort that is involved in welcoming a community member and setting them up, right, with what they need to be, as you said, Roman, self-sufficient. So really appreciate you explaining that, the work that Cappy is doing for us. And with that, I'd like to turn to Yusra Arab with Zaka. Yusra, are you with us? Wonderful. I see you.
Hi.
But I can't hear you. Okay, great.
Couldn't find my mute button. Yep, I'm here.
Super. Please go ahead. Thank you. I know you're going to talk a bit about housing, and I will pull up your slides here in a quick second.
Great. Well, hi everyone. Assalamu alaikum. My name is Yusra. I'm here representing Zaka, and I'll give you all a brief overview of the organization and then talk a bit about how we are involved in the resettlement effort. Zaka was founded in 2014 by a group of Muslim folks in the Twin Cities, two of whom are my parents, Nahid and Bilal Murad. And I know that they're on the line, so if they want to say anything, I trust that they'll jump in. Zaka is an acronym, and the Z stands for Zakat. Zakat is a mandatory charitable tax that all Muslims are required to give to redistribute wealth within their community. It's equivalent to 2.5% of one's assets. And the wisdom of Zakat is really that in Islam, our belief is that our wealth is actually a gift from us, or a gift to us from God, but it does not belong to us. And our responsibility is to make sure that our wealth is used to better the lives of the people in our local communities. So the organization came about really to focus on Muslims who were facing financial hardship in Minnesota, and specifically in Hennepin and Ramsey County, and we have maintained that explicit focus. We are a fully volunteer-run organization. All of our board members are Muslim, and we are an entirely grassroots-funded organization. You can go on to the next slide, Michelle. So I'll talk briefly about our services. I really want to get into some of the content on the next slide, so I won't spend a ton of time here. But our main service is emergency financial assistance. At the beginning of Zaka's life, this was really a broad category, and very quickly we began to see that our #1 financial assistance request was rent. Rent and housing is the foundation for everything, as we know, and so 9 out of 10 of our applications are still for rental assistance, although we also still focus on vehicle repair, auto payments, medical bills, childcare, and things of that nature. We have a very small transitional home in Eagan for women and children, most of whom are immigrants, refugees, and are survivors of domestic or sexual violence. In 2020 through early 2021, we focused very heavily on our unhoused neighbors, given the crisis that occurred after the uprising following the murder of George Floyd. We ran a small hotel to housing program for a period of about 6 months and moved roughly 140 people from encampments directly into permanent housing. And lastly, our most recent service has been being involved in the Afghan refugee resettlement process. Our main function here is still on rental assistance. So we partner with the refugee resettlement organizations to ensure that all families are able to access the 6 months of guaranteed rental assistance when they are moved into housing. And to date, we've received roughly 93 applications for that purpose. You can go on to the next slide, Michelle. So I want to share some of this information because I think it's very important for us when we're talking about resettlement to be honest about the conditions that we're actually resettling people into. We are in a very severe housing crisis in Minnesota, and any new arrivals are not protected from that reality, just as our existing renters in Minnesota are also not protected from it. So I just want to share some data on our application because I think it provides a little bit of a window into what is really going on in Minnesota and in the Twin Cities. So from 2014 to 2019, we were receiving roughly 50 to 100 applications per year. In 2020, that number went up to 320. In 2021, it went up to 360. And this year, and we're not even done with the first half, we've already received 223 applications for rental and financial assistance. And that is not including the applications coming from new Afghan arrivals. So we are getting an average request of $2,163. Our applicants have an average rent of $919 and an average monthly income of just over $1,200. Given that the definition of severely cost burdened is when somebody is paying more than 50% of their income on housing, on average, our applicant pool is paying 75% of their income on rent. It is a completely unsustainable situation for all of our applicants to be living in these private market rate units where rent is climbing at a pace that is blowing the wage increases out of the water. I think the median rental amount has increased by 14% since the year 2000, and median income has only increased by 1% over that same time period. So if you look at our Afghan rental assistance applications, we've received, as I mentioned, 93. Again, we've got average rent of about $1,289. And in order to prevent new arrivals from being in that same category of severely cost burdened, their average monthly income would need to be over $2,500, which I think we can all understand why that feels so unattainable for new arrivals who are not only coming from an extremely traumatic resettlement, but also are now reacclimating to a completely new country where language, transportation, education, basically everything is a barrier. So I just want to, I always want to mention this anytime that we're having a conversation about resettlement. If there is not an effort, a statewide effort, and certainly in Minneapolis, to really expand the stock of supportive, subsidized public housing, this housing crisis will continue to affect everybody, and it will continue to affect new arrivals. So I think we have to keep that in our mind if we want to talk honestly about what a resettlement really looks like long term. Michelle, you can go to the next slide, please. Just briefly, I'll share a bit of the hard numbers, and then I'll conclude on the next slide. So our applicants are by and large not receiving emergency assistance from the state. There are numerous reasons for that. Right now, I think the biggest reason is that the emergency assistance application portal is absolutely swamped with applications, given that the very, very last eviction moratorium protections are set to end on June 1st. And there are people that are still living in a pandemic, still experiencing a lot of financial hardship and behind on their rent. Emergency assistance through the county is often their last line of defense, and the turnaround time on that application right now is pretty long, and people are getting denied. So we don't have a group of applicants who are really able to receive support somewhere else. Obviously, structural racism is a huge part of our work. We have an applicant pool that is vast majority BIPOC individuals, and COVID is still the #1 factor that is leading to financial strain in people's households. Next slide, please. So I'll end here just because I want to add a little bit of bring some more specific examples to what we're talking about and what we're constantly iterating around at Zucca. So we're dealing with 2 applicant families right now, and I think it really has struck me the similarities across these 2 families. One of them is a new Afghan family, a family of 8 living in a $2,000 a month 2-bedroom house in Richfield. The current wage earner in that household is making $21 an hour. And so as soon as the resettlement organization rental assistance came to the 6-month end, this became completely unaffordable for them. So we are trying to help with 1 more month, but it's really unclear as to what is going to happen next. I think we all know that everybody here has only limited capacity. We can't make affordable housing show up out of nowhere when it doesn't exist. And even though 6 months might feel like a lot of time for people to get settled, it's really not. 6 months is really not a lot of time. And it's very unlikely that the family is going to find housing that is even somewhat affordable. Best case scenario is that they're going to find something else within the realm of 1,800 to 2,100 and still be in that severe cost burden category that I described earlier. Now I want to talk about the second family that is not a new arrival family, but a family that is Somali that has been here for some time. Another family of 8 with only 1 parent and 6 children, and the parent is also currently pregnant, living in a $2,400 a month 4-bedroom, also making minimum wage, receiving a little bit of extra in food stamps and Social Security for a child with a disability, who is also coming up against potential eviction, unable to maintain the rent that of the unit that they're in, and not having really English-speaking skills, not sure how to access resources, get access to MFib, find a caseworker. I don't know what will happen after we help with a month of rent. So these are just stories that I wanted to share, because if we are not cognizant of the reality for the families that are represented by the right-hand side of this slide, that is the trajectory for new arrivals. So I think it's important for us to be honest from a very early stage about the protections that needs to be put in place to prevent similar outcomes for our new arrival families. Rental assistance is, I wish it was a long-term solve, but it is not. So with that, I know it's not a very hopeful outlook, but I just want to iterate that it's important for everybody to be very proactive in whatever way that they can to be advocating for more long-term supports, because we're resettling people into a broken market, and we have to be real about it. So I'll put my contact information in the chat. We are here to help with rental assistance for new arrivals from Afghanistan, but also for really anybody that you may be working with who is in an unstable housing situation. Our mission and our goal is to prevent people from being evicted, and that is what we plan on doing. So if anyone has questions, please feel free to reach out, and thanks all for your time.
Thank you so much, Yusra. I really appreciate the important work that Zaka is doing, and also really appreciate the harsh reality that you're explaining here. Just want to tell the audience that we are recording this conversation. We'll send out a link afterwards, and we'll also share the slides to participants, and then more broadly too. I think this data that you're sharing, Yusra, is incredibly important and really paints a very challenging picture that I think we all need to see in terms of identifying solutions and strategies to ensure that people have access to safe and affordable housing, including our newest residents. And we're at 11:51 and want to make sure that there is enough time for the rest of our speakers. So we have Ward Westray from YMCA, and then we'll touch on a couple of City of Minneapolis speakers briefly, and hopefully we'll have a little bit of time for questions yet. So please, Ward, if you're available, go ahead.
Sounds good. Thanks, Michelle. Yeah, I will try to make this brief. If you could bring up my slide, that'd be terrific too.
Yep, we'll do. Just give me one quick moment. Go ahead.
Okay, great. Yeah, so thanks everybody. Thanks for having me here. My name is Ward Westray, and I work with the YMCA of the North. So that is the 19 YMCA associations around the Twin Cities, collectively called the YMCA of the North. And I represent a state-provided service called the Family of Sisters. So if you remember Rochelle talking earlier in this presentation about the different long-term supports provided to refugee individuals, one of these 5 programs is called the Family of Sisters. And basically, in short, the Family of Sisters serve individuals, refugee and other immigrant individuals, for up to 5 years after their arrival. and we help provide them with a lot of basic and immediate needs. So food, shelter, ESL classes, public benefits, kind of your nuts and bolts of that sustenance you need to live here, really. And we work a lot with resettlement agencies and also CAPI. You know, they're doing really terrific work. And we partner with them to basically ensure that when these clients are done working with these resettlement agencies, they have some recourse to turn to if they do need that initial help after that initial time working with those agencies. So some of these examples of things we provide are on the slide here, and it can be, like I mentioned, food or ESL or connecting to employment, but also just extraneous things you might not think of, such as having your mail interpreted for you, or practicing for a driver's license test, or one of our new clients needs help getting glasses, for instance. So really, we try to be kind of a catch-all service, and a lot of these services are provided directly by the YMCA and also the 4 other metro area agencies that provide these family assistor services, including the Afghan Cultural Society. Nasrine was the first to speak in this presentation. They recently joined us, so they are now currently providing these services too, which is really great because now we have Dari and Pashto speakers who can connect with a lot of these Afghan clients we're serving. So yeah, in short, we connect people to these services for up to, again, 5 years after they arrive. And we are really expanding a lot. It's our third year of this program, and during the first year, collectively in the metro area, we served over 980 families, and in the second year, we've served over 1,400, and this year we're on track to even beat that too. So there's a lot of need out there, and we're definitely trying to expand our services, and having the new support of the Afghan Cultural Society to help us provide these services is really terrific. And we're not the only piece of the puzzle here, but we try to be that kind of catch-all again that helps connect people and make sure they don't fall through the social safety net and connect them to a lot of these critical services. And we do connect with Zakat and some of these other agencies on this call, but also other organizations too. We've made 40 new partnerships in the last year, for instance. So we really do want to reach out there and do a lot of outreach to the community to make sure that nobody falls through, like I mentioned. So yeah, I guess I'll cut it short there to leave time for the remaining speakers, but that's basically it. The Family Sisters, again, are, we're kind of a port of entry for not only refugees, but also other immigrants, to connect them to a lot of those basic necessities, including those other 4 state programs, which include family coaching to provide career pathway development and community orientation and legal representation. And yeah, so basically we're here to be that catch-all service for people. So I'll drop my information in the chat. So please feel free to reach out to me or Nasrine too, if you have any questions about me or what the work of the Afghan Cultural Society is doing at this moment too. So thank you.
Thank you, Ward. That's wonderful. Really appreciate YMCA. And just to make sure that we have enough time for our city presenters, wanted to turn it over to Community Planning and Economic Development Representative Mike Slezak to share updates from the city, and then we'll turn it over to Deb. And Mike, if you want me to pull up that slide, I'm happy to do so. If you'd like to speak briefly without a slide, that's fine too.
If you have it, go ahead, and I'll just get rolling with our update. So Mike Slezak, Career Pathways Manager with in Minneapolis Employment and Training. Very, very happy to say that we have been in the process of hiring for essentially an evacuee, Afghan refugee evacuee coordinator, employment coordinator position. And we're getting very close to hiring, which is really exciting. And just kind of wanted to take a minute to share the goals of this position as we've talked about it more. And it primarily would be 2 things. So one is working with job seekers, and less on the direct service side, but more making sure they have an employment plan, an employment coach, identifying priority needs, and working with their current case managers and counselors to make sure that their job search is moving and they're helping to jump in and address any barriers. The second part is really working with employers, and this is kind of on, I wouldn't say cataloging, but really working with employers to keep track of all of the job opportunities and the employers who have been open to, hiring recent immigrants, and especially the ones that have, you know, some of the, I think are ready to take on recent immigrants and have shown that they're, you know, strong employers and thoughtful employers and good employers, and making sure that those opportunities are out there. And then things like facilitating job fairs, opportunities to arrange group transportation, and working on identifying underemployed individuals who have, you know, had to take a job because they need one, but are really underemployed and not able to utilize their full skill set. So working with them to make sure that they're able to take their next step. I won't go into this slide too much because it is pretty complicated. But the kind of goal, or what it does capture a little bit, is just this person is hopefully going to be able to work with just a really wide variety of stakeholders to make sure that that system is kind of moving towards getting everybody placed. So hopefully in the next week we'll be able to announce our new hire for that, and really excited to have that person get started and get going.
That's perfect. Looking forward to that hire at City of Minneapolis. And Mike, if you wanted to put contact information regarding where you're at into the chat, if people want to learn more, that would be wonderful. And Deb, a couple of minutes. I know with the fact that there are so many Afghan youth resettling, that Youth Coordinating Board is very interested in this and working with this population. And I know that you've got some information here, so we'll give you just a couple minutes if you can quickly go through. Yes.
I'll go quickly. My name is Debbie Ziesmer. I'm with the Minneapolis Youth Coordinating Board. We are a community resource hub. We're one of 5 community resource hubs in the city of Minneapolis. And really what these hubs are intended to do is make it easier for families to get what they need through a culturally appropriate relationship-based navigation of the programs and systems that are available throughout our state. Because we are child-focused and youth-focused, that could mean assistance with disability services, healthy development or screening, behavioral concerns, as well as family well-being, mental health, and childcare. The other thing we do is we are the hub for the Minneapolis After School Network. So we convene all of the after school and summer activities for the youth in Minneapolis. So wherever youth are, you can find a presence by either us or one of our close partners. We manage the What's Up 612 tab on our website. If you go to that tab, that will tell you where all the youth activities are happening. That's updated consistently. So the parks, the libraries, any of the nonprofit organizations that do after school and summer programming, those will be listed there. So as you're working with families who have youth that might need a place to go, please check out our website and look at what's available for families and youth. I will drop my contact information in the chat. So if you have any questions, I'm running really quickly through this, so we have time for questions. So please feel free to contact me.
That's wonderful. Thank you, Debbie. And I see we're at 12. I don't know if people have questions they wanted to ask, or if any of our presenters are able to stay any longer. If not, I just wanted to close before we stop recording and say thank you so much to all of our presenters for all the information that you've shared and the important work that you are doing to welcome immigrant residents, Afghan evacuees to the city of Minneapolis and to the state of Minnesota. There are many resources where you can learn more on how to get involved, and we'll be sharing those resources in the chat and by email afterwards, and want to make sure that if people have questions or last thoughts that they would like to share, feel free to do so with a couple of minutes that we have left. And I'm just going to stop the recording now so that people feel comfortable, maybe perhaps feel more comfortable asking their questions. Thank you so much again.